Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm T with Teresa H Creates, and I have been working on a project for the last couple of days to clear out some of the recycled materials in my studio. So if you're anything like me, Amazon visits more often than family, and I have got a ton of this packing paper. I can't throw it away, obviously, because it needs to be used for something, but I could not for the life of me figure out what. I was taking little bits of it and stamping on it and using it for clusters, things like that. But I thought there has to be something more because I was only using up tiny bits at a time. And that's when I decided to play around. So I have been going the mixed media route. Let me move these out of the way. And turning that packing paper into journal paper. So this is what I have been doing. And this is all packing paper. And I have just been playing around using paints and inks and gesso and Mod Podge to make all of this beautiful paper for journals. That was one. I've done 3 so far. It has been a lot of fun, and I decided, you know what? I should share this. Now, this is not this is a very messy project. This is not a clean project. Usually when you're working in mixed media, it tends to be a little messier than the average paper crafting project. So I was going to go through a few of the steps that I went through to create some of these pages with you to create a 4th book. I do have 3 of them, and let me show you the next one. They're all just a little bit different as far as the style that I used. And this one combines styles from both of these books into one so that the pages actually vary quite a bit from each other. There's not one cohesive kind of journal like these others are, where the pages kind of duplicate each other. So I wanted to do something similar to this one and walk you through the process of the different types of papers that I used. At the end, I even took some of the scraps and put them along the spine to decorate them. And that's the final one. And these are actually kind of recycled as well. So years and years ago, probably about 4 or 5, 6 years ago, actually, no, goodness, it would have been 8 or 9 years ago. I took a class in Austin, Texas from a wonderful artist and met lots of great friends. I was really out of my league, out of my depth there. These were true artists. I was not. I play around. So this is, but I did learn a lot of stuff though. And this is just we were playing around, and this is on mixed media paper, and it was one huge sheet, and I cut it down to make 2 journals out of it. And this is actually some watercolor techniques we did along with pastels on this. It's a 400 grit UArt sanded paper. So it's actually rough, a little bit rough to the touch. So but these are stencils and pastes and all kinds of paints. And I know these are nice and vibrant. I don't have these paints anymore. So I had to use what I had in my stash. I didn't want to run out and get anything else. So let me show you what I've got. I'm going to change it up this time. This is another one of the pieces that I had from that weekend. And it was... they were just collecting dust in my studio. Like I said, I haven't done anything with them. They were just sample pieces. We were just trying things out. And I thought, why not use them for covers? They're already done, basically. So I chose some of the dyed paper that I've been making recently, put it on the inside, stitched around it. It doesn't have to be stitched. It could have been glued in, but I just got my sewing machine put together. So I've been trying to stitch everything to get a little bit better because as you can see, it is not even and it is pretty wonky. So I really need to freshen up on that technique for sure. So this is going to be the cover of our journal. That's already done. And I've cut the pages. I'm going to do 6 pages. So I'm going to show you 6 different styles or methods that I used to decorate these pages. So I have them cut already, and I have them cut so that height-wise, they're going to fit in the book. But they are wider than the book at this point. So I will be taking off a good quarter of an inch, not quarter of an inch, half an inch to 3/4 of an inch of this paper, but it gives me some nice scraps to work with. So that's totally fine. And for the purposes of playing around with mixed media, this is perfect. So I did not cut the width of the packing paper. I only went down and cut the length off of the packing paper slips. So that is what I'm going to be playing with. So I've got stencils, and I've got inks, and I've got glues and gessos and brayers and all kinds of painting tools and paints and stamps. And I'm going to pull everything together, get my surface protected, and then I will be right back and we can get started with this technique. And remember, bring your apron or clothes that you don't mind getting dirty because it's going to get messy. See you in a minute. All right, I'm back. I've got my work surface covered. I just put down some parchment paper to kind of protect my surface. And then I am going to get started. So I did go ahead and fold these down the center, and then use my bone folder to kind of press them down a bit. And I wanted to get 2 different sides. So I'm going to use the page that opened up on the front, and then the page that opens up on the back side. So I have some old pages here of music paper, and so I wanted to decorate these, and you could use anything with collage. I wanted to kind of collage these with the music paper. I've got one of the little silicone brushes, and then just matte Mod Podge. And you can use, honestly, any of your glues that you want. I do have a medium that I could also use for this. Your PVA would go on here as well, but I wanted to seal it. Let me get that on there a little bit better. I wanted to seal over the papers with the Mod Podge, so that's why I went ahead and decided to use that so that I could seal this, because I'm going to put color down on top of this. And you don't have to seal it. You could just glue it down and then stamp on top. When I first did this, though, I wasn't sure what direction I was going to go in because I was just playing around. And if you're new to my channel and don't know, I used to do mixed media quite a bit in the past, and then was out of my studio for a while. And so just kind of lost a lot of those techniques that I had learned and I knew and I used. And so I'm trying to spool up and get back to it. I started out as a card maker and still enjoy making cards, but when I came back into my space, I realized that I had lost a lot of the knowledge that I had before, and I'm kind of slowly gaining it back. It's coming back to me. I mean, all of these tools and things that we use, that we learn along the way, I mean, if you don't use it, you kind of lose it. You really do. So, and you can use anything for this collage. You could use pattern paper. You could use anything that you would use for any of your other, like if you're making masterboard. So it's kind of similar to that. So if you wanted to use some pattern paper scraps, if you wanted to use book pages, anything like that would work. I am just slapping it down. I'm not worried about getting full coverage. We're going to cover over it. You're only going to see bits and pieces in the end. So I'm not really worried about that, but I am heavy-handed with this glue here. Very much so. So I think that the key is to just not overthink it whenever you're doing collage. And I am not the best collage artist, but I do well enough to get by. put that down. I am going back over it. I've got a lot of glue on here, and it's not intentional. I usually use a foam brush for this, and I've recently discovered the silicone brushes, and so I just haven't perfected the silicone brush yet. Just not perfected that. So I'm getting more glue, I think, than I want or need on my brush here. And I'll figure it out. Let me set that up so I can bring this into view. I'll figure it out. It'll get better. Just not right now. So this has been a lot of fun to play with the last few days. And I don't want you to have to sit here and watch me collage this entire thing. So I am going to finish up this collage off camera, and then I'll be back to show you the next step. All right, so I have got these collaged the way that I want, and this is fine. I'm going to cover it up, a lot of it, so you're just going to barely see it. So it just needed to add, I just have it on there to add texture and to the background. And I'm cleaning off my silicone brush. I still need to master this thing. I feel like I used a ton of glue, probably more than necessary, but that's okay. So I'm going to set these aside to dry. And while those are drying, I'm going to get started on the next little bit here. So one of my favorite techniques is dry brush. And I am going to take this gnarly little brush that I have. It has seen better days. It's got these wicked little bristles on it, and I think most of them have fallen off or been cut down. I'm going to take some Liquitex gesso, and I am going to dry brush this paper. And I want it on my brush, but I'm not getting the bristles wet. That's why it's called dry brush, with like water beforehand, like you would with a watercolor. And so I'm just barely putting it on here. And then I am going to sweep across this paper and get this gesso in here. And it is going to pick up all the little grooves. And every time I go back to it, I'm going to kind of tap it off so that it just gets this light brushing, and I don't get any really, like this right here, that I get just kind of this light brushing, and I don't get a lot of spots that are really, really wide or heavy. I'm going to flip it over and go the other way. And there's no real rhyme or reason to that. I just work better with my right hand going this way. That's why I flipped it over, so that I could do that. That's not necessary though. All right, I'm gonna set that aside. And something else to consider is just changing up the direction. So I'm gonna dry brush again, but this time I'm going to go vertically instead of horizontally on my paper. So I'm just changing up the direction of the dry brush. Kind of dapple that off a little bit. See what I meant about it getting messy? Already gotten myself several times. And this is a really, really cheap little tool. Actually, I don't even think I think I got it like at the hardware store. I don't even think that I picked it up at like a supply store or anything like that, a craft supply store. I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to dry brush this next side. And I'm not being too careful because I don't mind my little mat here, this protector, this parchment paper, I don't mind it getting dirty and messy because I don't mind like my papers picking up all this little extra texture that's going to be on the surface. I like that, so it does not bother me at all. Again, just changing up that direction, just need a little bit more, maybe a tad more. There we go. See, those happen when I don't tap it off. Then I get those bigger blobs there. I'm gonna go back up here. And I'm going to the ends here, even though I know that a lot of that is going to come off. But that's not the way I'm going to think when I'm doing this, because when I go to tear off the edges of this, the edges, a lot of what the artwork that I've done is actually going to come off, and I know that in advance, but I'm not going to plan for that. I'm not going to plan for what's going to remain and what's going to come off. I'm just going to decorate and go because I want it to be nice and organic. I don't want it to be thought out and in the lines and it has to fit here and there, and I just, that's not the direction that I want to go. Okay, so next thing that I am going to do is I want to leave the dry brush around the area, around the edges here, but I do want to create kind of a writing surface in the center. So let me get my spreading tool. This guy, it's just an old gift card. And I'm going to put a little gesso here. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of it. And I'm going to kind of just smush it out. I want just a nice little white area in the center for writing purposes in the journal. Put a little more on here. A little bit more at the bottom. Well, that was a lot more at the bottom. But that's fine. I can pick up a lot of it here. And then I've got some here to start on the next one. And hopefully I can get this covered here. Hope that I was in frame while I was doing that. I get so wrapped up with what I'm doing, I just don't even pay that much attention to the camera because I think if I see it, then you guys surely see it, right? And this has just been an ongoing problem. I'll get used to this eventually, right? Okay. So now I've got a nice writing surface here. And this is also a writing surface on this back side, but it's just going to be this dry brush area. And so it adds a nice contrast to the actual paper here, this packing paper. And there is a lot of glue being used. There's a lot of gesso being used because this packing paper really soaks it up, basically. There's a nice dry brush area and then the dry brush around the sides here, but then a nice writing space in the center. So I am going to set these aside and let them dry a little bit. All right, let's get these guys out. Now on these guys, I'm not going to dry brush. I am just going to use that technique of smooshing these out with the gesso to create a nice surface to either stamp or paint on, because with this nice white surface of this gesso, the inks and paints will look a lot different than they would if we just went to straight stamping on the paper itself, because it's such a nice dark background. And this provides us a lot of light for doing that. So just want to get a thin layer. I'm going to use this. I'm going to leave that plain so that you'll be able to see what it's like to put just the paint and the inks down straight onto this packing paper without having the gesso. Let me clean this off, close it up. I'm going to clean up a little bit and then I'll be back to start the next process. All right, so this is done. I've cleaned up my tools a little bit, and so I'm going to flip these over and we're going to do the next side, and that is going to be paint. So I'm going to use the credit card technique, my little spreader here, to go ahead and do the paint technique with you guys. So this is my cover, and this is where I'm drawing my inspiration. So I pulled out some blue acrylic paints that I have, and these are new to me. I got these in an unboxing recently. It was a mystery box purchase from Dreams, Etc. And so this is Art by Marlene. So I chose Heaven, Smurf, and Azure. And then I also thought purple would look nice as just an extra pop of color in all of this. So I picked lavender and fuchsia. And then I brought in this one called Tobacco to see if you know, that might be something that I want to add. So on this side, so we've got our nice gessoed side, and on this side, we're going to put down some paint. And just remember, in this video, we're just prepping these. Mixed media is all about layers and building it up. You have to allow time to dry in between. So this is going to be a multi-video process. It's not going to be extremely long. But if you want to do this along with me, there's going to be plenty of time to do this. Anytime you're going to work mixed media, you've got to give yourself some time because it gets messy. You pull out a lot of stuff and you have to allow time for drying. So next steps, I am just going to put some color down. And I think I'm going to put some of this dark blue, the Smurf down here, and I'll put some of this Heaven up here, and then let's see what that looks like. I'm going to use my gift card here to kind of smoosh it out. And I think I want some more of that lighter blue in here. Was not enough. I'm telling you, so this packing paper is great, but it does soak up the paints, the inks, the gessos, all of it. It really does. So just keep that in mind. I'm just kind of getting rid of some of those bubbles. I'm trying to get all the paint off of my card. And then that's good to me. I'm going to set that aside. I'm keeping this pretty much just basics here. So I'm not going to do a whole lot. This is, if you're a long time, you know, mixed media person, this is not the video for you. This is beginner stuff because I'm getting back into it and I'm discovering some of the methods and the things that I lost over time. And so this is not the tutorial for you. But if you're new to it, you want to kind of try it out, add something different to your wheelhouse, then this is the video for you. This is more of a beginner. If you've got some paints laying around and you're thinking, how do I use those? How do I incorporate those? Then this is that video. You can see how much paint I'm putting down and how it's just soaking it up. And I keep trying to split it a little bit so that I'm going one side and then the other. I mean, I don't even think it would be much different if I put it on a brayer. Let me see. Let me get my trusty palette. I really like that fuchsia color, so let's try some of that on the brayer. So I put a little bit of ink down. I'm gonna kind of get some of that paint down, I mean, and then I'm gonna put it on my brayer and yeah, I mean, I'm not getting much more coverage than the other techniques, so we'll just stick with the credit card for now, I guess. Let me go ahead and wipe off my brayer so it doesn't get too dirty. All right, let me go ahead and set that aside. Let me see, I think I might pull some more of that teal out in here. What is this called again? Azure. All right. And so you can see, working on the flip side, you pick up a little bit of those colors there. If we go back to this is almost dry. It still feels just a little bit damp, but we're getting there. So I am going to set those aside. And then let's check back on our that needs a little bit more drying over here. But our dry brush sides are done. So let me move some of this aside and I'll be right back, and we'll go back to our dry brush and gessoed pieces. All right, I decided I'm going to change gears a little bit with what I do with these. So I am going to wait until we get to some of the layering processes to mess with those guys. But what I want to do with this guy is, I know it's still just a little bit damp over here, but for what I'm going to do, it'll be fine. So I'm going to use my card, my little spreader tool, to go ahead and cover up this page. So I like to kind of start down the center. I'll use the other side. And I am going to put gesso over this guy. There we go. It is gessoed up. You can still see the texture and the music behind it, but it is somewhat covered up. I'm going to set it aside. All right. So now that we've got all of our bases done and they are drying, I am going to give them time, and I'm going to spend a few minutes pulling out my stamps and ink pads that I want to use, because now we're going to start building up some of the layers on these pieces. So go ahead and find whatever project that you're doing, go ahead and find some coordinating ink pads. So I'm using Stampin' Up, Not Quite Navy, Marvelous Magenta. I've also got Midnight Muse and Marina Mist. I'm also using some Gathered Twigs Distress Oxide. I pulled out Seedless Preserve, I have some Faded Jean and Uncharted Mariner. And I believe that is, oh no, I also have in the Distress ink, not just the oxide, I have some Peacock Feather, Gathered Twigs, Chipped Sapphire, Seedless Preserve, and Faded Jeans. So those are the colors I thought would probably mix well with this. And so those are the ones that I pulled out. I also pulled out a handful of stamps that I'm going to use and some stencils. So go ahead and pull your stuff together. And in part 2, we'll start adding layers. And until next time, bye.